I would like to call to order the Historic Architectural Review Commission Chair Meeting. Today is Friday, May 19th, 9 a.m. We're Rebecca Hall. Present from staff are Erica Jensen and Piper Miller. Our chairperson, Mark Shambaugh, is having hip surgery. And so I will be acting as chair today as the vice chair. I'll let all the applicants know I did listen to the previous meetings and I will strive to be consistent with the line of conversation from those previous meetings. I'll do my best not to go off in unforeseen random directions. There are no minutes to read and I don't think will be any public comment, but I'll open it up to public comment if there is any on non-agenda items. Seeing none, we can move on to our first action item, which is the Gavin residence, which is continued from the February 17th, 2023 HARC chair meeting. It is the consideration of an application for minor scale new construction in the residential zone district that will contain no more than 950 square feet, but less than 2,500 square feet of floor area pursuant to LUC 7-203.B.1.B.1. The legal description is block 3, lot 18R, East Telluride Addition. The address is 535 East Galena. Zone district is Hillside Developing 2. Owner is Patrick Gavin. Applicant is Dylan Henderson, Salt Architecture, and the staff member is Erica Jensen.
Great, thank you. Okay, this project was continued from the February 17th HARC chair meeting, and it is the final minor scale review. It is located in the Hillside Developing 2 zone district and Developing Hillside treatment area. It is located outside the historic district. And I will say this is one of the steepest lots we've seen with about a 70-foot grade change from north to south. It is the new construction of a 774 square foot above grade primary structure and 366 square foot accessory structure. Condition 1 was to lower the profile of the building and secondary structure to better reinforce the natural topography and to minimize visual impacts. And condition 2 was to further step down the building at the second and third level via moving to a 9/12 pitch, reducing the sidewall heights and or setting the structure deeper into the slope. Condition 3 was to revise the roof slopes to be sympathetic to the slope of the hillside. On the primary structure, the profile was pushed down and the roof pitches were reduced to 9/12. On the secondary structure, the gables were removed for a shed roof form with a pitch of 3/12. The building was also set back deeper into the slope and the deck was inset into the shed roof form on the southwest corner to provide further stepping down and to break up the mass. I think you can see we have the before and after, and the profile has been significantly reduced. Condition 4 was to revise the materials on the back module of the primary structure to be more traditional. Condition 6 was to revise the rusted metal panels to be applied in a more traditional hierarchy. And condition 7 was to ensure that the chosen siding materials do not extend to the ground. The rusted metal panels on the back module of the primary structure were completely removed and revised to a horizontal siding. And the foundation material was added so that there's a clear distinction between the wall materials and the foundation. Condition 5 was to revise the materials on the secondary structure to not mimic the primary structure. The secondary structure materials were changed to be more rustic with a corrugated metal roof and rusted corrugated metal siding. Condition 8 was to reduce the number of dormers. There were 7 dormers proposed. There are now 3 dormers. Condition 9 was to remove the black and steel posts. Those have been removed. Condition 10 was to restudy the front entry and consider further defining it. The orientation and design of the entry stayed largely the same, but this condition was to consider restudying, so that doesn't seem like an issue. Condition 11 is to reduce the height of the retaining wall in the east elevation. The height of the retaining wall was reduced to 5 feet. Condition 12 was to revise the deck railings to be more solid. They have been revised to help with light spill, and condition 13 was to provide a landscape plan, which has been provided. I am happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicant who is here in person.
I have no questions.
Great.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Dylan Henderson, Clay Wadman. And I am just going to share. Eric always does a really excellent job with this. So I am just going to go through the three items that I think were the most sort of impactful to the original design that Mark Shambaugh commented on. And so condition one, which Eric already went through, was lowering the profile of the building and secondary structure. The response was that on the primary structure, the profile was pushed down and roof pitches were reduced to 912. And on the secondary structure, the gable was removed for a shed roof form with a pitch of 312. And so this goes into some later comments as well, which I'll address, is that we completely removed the gable and dormers on this high accessory structure and made it into a shed roof form, eliminating the dormers in order to follow the natural topography of the slope. The previous comment from Chair Shambaugh was to revise the roof pitches down to a 912. I actually also reduced the plate height by a foot on those roofs in order to get that profile significantly down, because I felt like in Mark's review of this that they really wanted to see a significant change to be more sympathetic to the topography, which I think we've accomplished. The other big change was that there was a continuous deck on the south elevation on this whole south facing side that connected sort of this living room and this game room. And we actually split the decks and made this into a shed roof form over the entry by insetting the deck here, by creating an individual deck for the game room here and having this shed roof form over the entry. I feel like we sort of accomplished three things. One, we follow the natural topography of the slope. Two, we further define the entry by giving it a roof as opposed to a deck that you're entering under. And three, we really minimize the scale of what was happening on that south elevation by having it step down further to the street. And I think that was a successful suggestion by Chair Shambaugh, and I think a successful sort of solution that we came up with here. Number two, further stepping down the building. I sort of just went through this, that all of those changes to that front south elevation deck and the reduction of the plate height and the changing from a 12-12 pitch to a 912 pitch and changing that shed roof form that from the gable to the shed roof on the accessory structure really helps step that building down natural topography. One of the goal of this from a design concept standpoint was to do what we consider to be traditional Telluride architecture. The client loves that sort of gabled traditional Telluride architecture, and to be able to do that successfully on the hillside. I think the majority of the applications that we're seeing in the H2 zone district specifically are shed roof forms, and the client really wanted to see a successful gable roof form. And I think we've accomplished that. And Chair Shambaugh had sort of reiterated that, saying, I think this could be really successful if we made these changes. Number three, revise the roof slopes. We talked about that, so I'm just calling out here so it's very clear for anybody viewing the meeting, the significant changes that were made to the application based on the previous comments, both from staff and Mark. And I want to thank Erica, because we really worked hard on this, going back and forth through sort of an iterative process to get to this point. And the accessory building changes, I went through this again. This is just sort of reiterating what we've already talked about, but just wanting to show this for anybody who's viewing online. So Clay, if you have anything, that was sort of what I wanted to address to say.
Yeah, the only Clay Wadman, I'm the owner's rep, and I was tasked with dialoguing with the neighbor. So we got a letter from the neighbor on the first application that asked that we follow staff recommendations, and we did some mass and study scales, kind of streetscapes and dialogue with them. What they were worried about was that this house was going to be much bigger than their house, when in fact, this house is smaller, it's narrower, it's about half as wide. It does go farther up the hill. We did put it back, or Dylan put it farther back in the hill so it addressed their views. And so Nicole sent a letter. They have no objections, and they're happy with the changes we've made. So that's all I have.
And I actually have one more thing. That's great, because we did get neighbor support, which I think was great. Stacy, this goes back to the conversation we were having the other night about during the work session. Is the stepping of this building is stepped at that 18-foot micropile depth in order to accomplish these sort of shoring profile. So if this helps inform that discussion at all, that was definitely something that controlled my depth of excavation in today's world, right? So it is sort of an interesting point that was being brought up during that meeting previously. So
We couldn't use this as an example because it hadn't been approved yet, but if it is approved, I think this will be a good example to use as well.
Agreed.
So happy to answer any questions.
I just kind of only, well, two things. There was some discussion during the previous meeting about perhaps moving the garage forward. It's right now it's 2 feet north of the property line. There was some discussion about moving it even with the property line to bring moved some of the mass a little bit forward and so it increased the stepping of the hill. When I looked at it, I think you're 19 feet right now for a parking space there, which seems functional. Was that part of it?
Yeah.
Internal discussion?
Part of the conversation, I also looked at, I don't want a footer crossing my property line. And so in order to handle the excavation and a footer, which is going to be a wide footer at that location, I just felt like I needed the road. And I've definitely pushed that boundary before and gone a foot away. And all of a sudden we're asking for approval to excavate into right of ways and have our footers off our property line, which doesn't work. So from a safe excavation standpoint, I just feel like that was as close as I could get.
Okay. And my only other question is about that retaining wall on the north side. I believe, although perhaps anyone can answer this question, this is the furthest lot to the on that eastern portion of Galena. So there will be no more, or is there a lot to the east? So that retaining wall that's currently 5 feet in height. It seems to me like if you lower that, you might be creating a bit of a swimming pool there again, because the slope does come from the east down towards the house. I can to achieve positive drainage. I can understand why that wall needs to be that high, but is there, the guideline talks about 30 inches for retaining wall height and we're at 60. Is there any option to bring that down more, more close to the guideline?
So just so I'm clear, so the retaining wall that you're talking about, I think the one that we had to reduce was on the eastern side of the project. So I can bring up the private wall and just show you. It was this retaining wall here. Oh, okay, let me share this. This is dangerous territory again when you start doing these things. This was the retaining wall that we had to reduce in height.
Yep.
On this northeast side. So I have a large boulder right here. And I have topography that I'm already sculpting down behind this roof to make all this work. And so there'll be some sort of soil nailing. It's going to happen back in here.
Also that tree, I think that boulder is integral to the root system of that.
Yeah, so this tree, this big dog right here, I'm going to just unhide this category.
And that's not the swing tree.
Right.
No, that's further up.
This is that massive tree that's lower down.
It's the same size as the swing tree. There's about 3 of them marching up the hillside.
Okay.
I feel like in order to accomplish this, leave these boulders in place, protect the roots of this really large tree, that's about all I've got. Because if I terrace this up any further, I'm going to be getting into that root structure.
Right.
And the goal is to try and keep that tree.
And that answers my question. We often find ourselves in a situation where we're reconciling conflicting guidelines or goals.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think, first of all, you're maintaining to the highest degree possible the existing topography uphill of that site, especially with the boulder. And we love trees. So there we go.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Those really were the only two things in reviewing the drawings. Like I said, I didn't want to get into conversations that weren't necessarily had in the first meeting. So I'm going to mute myself on maybe a couple other things because they weren't brought up in the first meeting, and I don't think it's fair to applicants to continually keep taking bites out of it. So I think I'll just say you've done a great job at addressing all the conditions. I mean, staff's not recommending a single condition of approval here. And you made voluntary steps above and beyond by reducing that plate height, for instance. I don't know that going to a shed roof at the secondary unit was necessarily a requirement, but you can just see here at the image that's on the screen, what a significant impact that has, looking up the hill. I mean, and we're not here obviously at ground level. I think at ground level, you don't really even probably catch that past the house. But, and there's not a lot of, I wouldn't think, pedestrian traffic on that street, and there's certainly no vehicular traffic. But nevertheless, from the gondola or even from perhaps Town Park or other vantage points, I think that's a major move. And so I don't really have anything else to say. I can make a motion.
We have to open it to public comment.
Oh, right. I do need to open to public comment on this application, if there is any. Piper, is there anyone online?
There is some public online, but nobody has their hand raised.
Okay, going once, going twice. Then I will close public comment and I will make a motion. See if I find it. I move to approve the minor scale application at 535 East Galena, Block 3, Lot 18R, East Telluride Edition, based on the findings in the staff memo dated May 19th. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on May 19, 2023, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days of this approval, or this approval becomes null and void. Unless otherwise indicated, the revised drawings submitted for a certificate of appropriateness must be a complete set with any changes to the drawings clouded and labeled. Any changes to the drawings beyond the conditions of approval may result in more than one submittal being required. And I don't have to vote because it's just me, right?
Right.
I do have then a question, since that item's closed.
Yeah.
Since there are no conditions of approval, there really isn't a requirement for revised drawings.
I was wondering that this morning. I've never had an application with no conditions of approval, so I will just double check with Jonna about that
Okay.
and let the applicant know how to proceed.
Great.
Yes, I was wondering.
Resubmit them with today's date.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Stacy, if we could open both 857 and 877 at the same time.
No problem.
Great.
Do we have the applicant for these two projects online?
They are online, yeah.
Okay. Then I will open our second and third action items concurrently. The first is the Littman Residence 2R, which was continued from the March 17th, 2023 HARC chair meeting. This is a consideration of a minor scale application for new construction in the Hillside Developing 1 zone district, which is located outside the THLD, but within the HPOD, and will contain 950 square feet or more of floor area, but not more than 2,500 square feet of floor area per LUC 7-203.B.1.B.1. The legal description is Lot 2R, Butcher Creek PUD. The address is 857 Butcher Creek. Zone district is Hillside Developing 1. The owner is Butcher Creek PA LLC. Applicant is Matt Garcia Design, and our staff member is Erica Jensen. And the other item is also the Lippman Residence, but 1R, which was continued from the same March 17th, 2023 HARC chair meeting. It is a consideration of a minor scale application for new construction in the Hillside Developing 1 zone district, which is located outside the THLD, but within the HPOD, and will contain 950 square feet or more of floor area, but not more than 2,500 square feet of floor area per LUC 7-203.B.1.B.1. Legal description is Lot 1R, Butcher Creek PUD. The address is 877 Butcher Creek. Zone district is Hillside Developing 1. The owner is Butcher Creek PA LLC. The applicant is Matt Garcia Design, and our staff member is Erica Jensen.
Great, thank you. I would just like to say that in this presentation, the pictures and examples shown are from both projects because the conditions are extremely similar. I would just like to mention that both lots slope steeply from north to south. These are, as the previous project, some of the steepest slopes we've dealt with, which seems to be a pattern as town is more developed. Condition 1 was to revise the terracing and retaining walls to respect the steep hillside and better contour to the natural topography. And condition 3 was to revise the retaining walls, terraced walls to better contour to the site, therefore reducing the number and height. The terracing and retaining walls have been largely eliminated on both projects, and both sites now closely follow the natural grade. The projects now significantly are more respectful of the hillside and natural topography. And as you can see in the before and after, the before had a large number of cuts in the hillside, and the after is very closely mimicking the natural grade. Condition 2 was to revise the retaining walls nearest to the street on the south facade to better step down with the hillside. These retaining walls were very tall on both properties, with the largest being about 15 feet. The walls have been eliminated and the natural grade now slopes down to the street. Condition 4 at 877 was to reduce the size of the first level deck, especially the wraparound design on the east elevation. And condition 4 at 857 was to reduce the size of the first level deck, especially the wraparound design at the east and west elevations. At 857, the west deck was eliminated on both projects and the east extension of the deck was pushed back, and the same at 877. The decks still do extend the entire facade and wrap around the east elevation. Condition 5 was to reduce the roof overhangs on the south facade. The roof overhangs were reduced about a foot on both projects. Condition 6 was to revise the foundation material dimensions to be similar to what was seen historically. And condition 7 was to ensure that the chosen siding materials do not extend to the ground, and there's a clear distinction between the foundation and wall materials. The foundation materials were revised to a dry stack stone, and there's now a clear distinction between the foundation and siding materials. Condition 8 was to remove or revise the materials on the front yard planters to better blend with the hillside. The concrete planters are removed, and the remaining planters will be plate steel for less formal landscaping that better blends with the hillside. Condition 9 was to reduce the size of the doors on the first and second level. At 857, the first and second level doors were reduced in height but not width. This condition has been retained to reduce the width of the doors. At 877, the solid infill portion of the doors was increased 6 inches, and the doors on the second level were reduced in height. The doors were not reduced in width. This condition has been retained to reduce both the height and width of the doors. Condition 10 was to remove the recessed can lights and wall sconces on upper level decks unless required for egress. These fixtures have been removed. Condition 11 was to reduce the number of fixtures. The number of fixtures was reduced. Condition 12 was to revise the deck railings to be a mix of transparent and solid. The deck railings are now steel infill, making them an appropriate mix of solid and transparent. Condition 13 was to provide a planting schedule with final CA plans. A planting schedule has been provided. Condition 14 was to show the location of utilities. The applicant is waiting on utility locations from the surveyor, so this condition has been retained. And condition 15 was to revise the trash enclosure to be open on 2 sides, and it is now partially open on 2 sides. And I am happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicant who is on Zoom.
I don't have.
No
any
questions? Okay. It's Matt and Nicole.
Yeah, I've asked them to unmute. There they go.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Matt is also online, so I can let him chime in when I'm finished if you'd like. Nicole Marshall here with Mount Garcia Design. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks Erica for that presentation. Let me share my screen with you. All right. So This is a lot of text. I'm gonna run through this really quickly. We're not just gonna touch on the conditions that were retained. And we'll spend our time on that, and then we can answer any further questions beyond that when we're finished. So the condition 2 about the utilities, absolutely, we're going to provide that. We just received all that updated site plan information, so we'll get that to y'all. So yeah, the only item that we just wanted to further discuss a little bit with y'all was condition 1 regarding the width and height of those doors at the first and second level of each property. And then I just wanted to run through quickly on some of these code items, just so that we are all understanding the key items that are applying to these doors. So for DH 26A, that is regarding minimizing light spills specifically from the doors themselves. And it seems like points 1, 2, and 3 we are complying with. 1 and 2 are regarding the garage doors, and then 3 is doors shall not have more than 2/3 light, which we are complying with. ES2B is specifically regarding minimizing light spill from the building in general. The concern is with the glass source of glare and how that can affect the perception of the night sky. And it's specifically noted that this issue is related to the window to wall ratios. And so I'm going to jump ahead on both points 2, 3, and 4. We are complying with, and then I think 1 is the big one in question, which is large areas of glass and exterior walls that may allow spillover of interior light sources resulting in nighttime glare should be used with caution. And so we just want to show you a couple items as to how we think that we are using those with caution and we are respecting the town below. And then ES 3A3 is more geared towards limiting the visual impacts in regards to lighting that could be seen from lower viewpoints down in town, specifically highlighting chances of being seen and detracting from this view down in town. And so I do want to note that so number 1, buildings located higher on hillsides are more visible at night, which may affect the night character of the community. We are less than 10 feet above town elevation. So we'll go into that in a second. The second item, using solid deck rails, 2/3 light doors and roof overhangs, we are complying with that at every condition. And then number 3, minimize the amount of glass area facing south to the town below. Again, we'll look at that in a second. And then let's locate interior light fixtures away from the windows. We absolutely will comply with that. And then 5, we are happy to show any, interior lighting plans if y'all need to see that. So let's go through. Let's try this again. All right. So just a quick visual, and obviously y'all know where this is located. I just wanted to put a visual to it. So while we are located in the North Hillside, we are notably west of town, and our direction of glazing is facing the valley floor due southwest. So you can almost argue that our east side of the building is facing town the same, if not more, than the south side. And then the elevation of town is set at 8,750 feet. These 2 homes are set at 8,758 and 59 respectively, which is 8 and 9 feet above the town elevation at that garage level. And I know a lot of those houses also in that hillside developing and transitional are, they're set 60, 70, even in some cases 100 feet above that town elevation. Okay, let's see here. Okay, and this is really just to reiterate that orientation. We're so used to looking at our plans shifted to be, due north, that like we are facing that southeast direction. I want to point out that so this is that first level floor plan for both lots, and this heavy dark line here is representing the portion of the grade, or the portion of that level that is completely below grade. So you can see we're left with less than 25% for wall opportunity to get natural light into our spaces. And then even with that said, like the windows that are the glazing that we are putting in our windows, we specifically are trying to keep those justified to the left, the farthest away portion from the direction of town, which is this way. And also just minimizing those where that glazing happens. So, we have on this level, we have one set of doors and that's it. We're not introducing any other sort of glazing in a window form. At this second level, it's very similar to that first, where you can see this heavy outline here. We are completely below grade. We don't have opportunity to introduce light that's above grade to get natural light in. And then I also want to point out that for lot 1R, we are proposing a wood screen wall here, which is a couple things. Obviously, it divides the deck space to function as two separate decks, but it's also going to really shield these windows from town. And the set of drawings that were submitted do not include that screen at lot 2R, but we are now proposing to go ahead and add those to help additionally screen from that direction. And then, of course, we're still complying with our 2/3 light, our railings, and our overhangs. This graphic is really just to kind of hit home our window to wall ratios. So at that first level, we are at 26.3% glazing within this full elevation, and at this level we're at 24, and then similarly the next level we're at 22.8 at both levels. And so in each of these cases, at the sliders at both the second levels, we went ahead and lowered that plate height a foot, and so these are now 8-foot standard doors. They actually have more infill than what is required. We're about at half light instead of 2/3, so that's going to help reduce significantly. And then for this main level, we're at these doors are 18 feet wide, but our width of our house is at 35 feet 6 inches. So we are at just right at half of our window to wall ratio as far as width goes. So there's still a significant amount of width of this wall that is still solid. And then not really any new information here, but beyond just being able to see the perspective and how at the second level, these doors really are set back. We're 22 feet from the edge of this roof. And then of course we have this 12-foot 9 deep overhang, and then the screen wall here as well. So we're just really not going to get much of that light spill that's going down to town, especially considering the fact that we're only, 8 and 9 feet above that town elevation. And then same idea here, just another graphic showing that depth and how these windows up here are just really not visible as far as light spill goes. Then one last few points that I'd like to make. Just some current projects that we know are under construction. And I don't want to get super nitpicky here, but we're just noting that the elevation of some of these homes are significantly higher. They are located directly north of town and not west, or northwest. And so yeah, this property, the garage level is 63 feet above town elevation. And I think it's obvious that the width of the glazing on all of these levels is occupying at least half, if not more, of that window to wall ratio. Another example as well. This property is sited 71 feet above town elevation, and there is approximately 22 feet of glazing in width on that main level. Not using overhangs in some instances. And then another one that's 105 feet above town elevation, which again, also arguably is 50% or more window to wall ratio on these levels. So yeah, I mean, overall, like, we're really happy with the direction that this project has gone in. We think it's looking really great. We just are concerned about the amount of natural light that those two levels are going to be able to get, considering that they're just so far buried under grade, and we don't have the opportunity to get natural light from some of these, other sides here and here. We have a couple windows, but other than that, the whole floor is completely buried. Yeah. So that will do it. Happy to answer any questions, and I will let Matt chime in here if he has any additional comments.
Hi, everybody. No, thanks, Nicole. That was great. And yeah, just everything Nicole just went through is what we're going for.
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to commend you for addressing in great detail most, if not all, of the conditions. Do I need to open up public comment before or after? I don't want to go into discussion yet. Public comment is before discussion,
Before deliberation.
before deliberation. So I'll open it to public comment.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Burke. I live at 880 Butcher Creek. And there's a few neighbors, and we have a couple of questions and just concerns. One, we're worried about the noise while they're blasting and drilling and pounding. One of my direct concerns is the retaining wall to the left of these properties, west of these properties, that's already compromised. And I'm not really sure whose retaining wall it is, but it's already falling down. And I do have some pictures I can show you. I did a little video. I'm not sure how to post that right now. We also are worried about drainage, because there are 6 houses directly below across the street. So we're worried about that. And we're also worried about the parking and staging with the construction of the project.
Okay, thank you. So now it's time for deliberation. So like I was saying, I would commend you on addressing pretty much all of the conditions. You spent quite a bit of time on condition number 1, which is to reduce the width of the doors. You made, I think, very compelling arguments. I think the other side of that argument, I think for me anyway, has to do with the concentration of that glazing into one area. And this might, we could argue me going in this direction, but policy 25 windows, these are doors, not windows. I get it, but they are functioning as windows. You even have alluded to the fact that this is your really only source of natural light. So since they're functioning in that manner, policy 25A, large expanses or clusters of glass are inappropriate. clearly these are large clusters. It's the only cluster of glazing on that south elevation at that level. I think that's the motivation for reducing the size so that it's not as large. I think, and I don't want to get into prescriptive sort of, direction here, but on the level above, there's an adjacent window, the expanse is broken up a little bit more, and we typically don't, we review each project on its own merit. So the comparisons to other projects can be instructive, but it's not necessarily binding in any way. But in all of those projects, the glazing, while maybe a higher percentage of wall area, were broken up into more distinct areas. So I think for me, you can go either direction. You can reduce the size of that cluster. So I would retain condition number 1, or perhaps look at ways at splitting that up some. I know a 4-pack door is cool. You're probably not going to want to give up on that, but that's probably as prescriptive as I want to get. I think reducing that, especially on that lower level, as you pointed out, the upper level starts to become less visible from below, but that level, and I don't know if on your plans it's level 1, if the garage is level 1 and that's level 2, or if that's your level. At any rate, that lowest collection of doors is large. And then clearly you're going to get to the location of the utilities. So we'll keep that condition. I do just quickly want to address public comment. Your concerns are super valid. Noise, unfortunately, isn't a HARC item.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was in the right meeting.
And I can also hopefully assure you that drainage is required to be retained on site.
Okay,
So the drainage will be designed by a civil engineer to be retained
okay.
on site. Those are just, again, that's not even a HARC, that's a building department, but just to put you at ease. Those conditions will be addressed.
Can I add something, Stacy?
Yes.
When the applicants submit for a building permit, they're required to provide a construction mitigation plan, which shows where they will be staging all their materials and where they will be parking, which is required to be on site.
Okay, perfect.
And when construction does begin, we do require a sign to be put up with contact information of who's doing the construction. I believe there's a QR code and you can pull up from the QR code all the construction documents.
Okay,
Yeah, and there's specific hours of operation, and all that stuff,
okay,
but that's building department, not.
okay.
With that said, I think I can make a motion. I'll do 857 first. I move to approve the minor scale application at 857 Butcher Creek, Lot 2R, Butcher Creek PUD, based on the findings in the staff memo dated May 19th, 2023, and with the following conditions. Number 1, reduce the width of the doors on the first and second level per DH 26A, ES 2.B, and ES 3.A.3. And I'd also like to add policy DH 25.A. And number 2, to show location of utilities in the final plans per DH 17.A. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on May 19, 2023, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days of this approval, or this approval becomes null and void. Unless otherwise indicated, the revised drawings submitted for a certificate of appropriateness must be a complete set with any changes to the drawings clouded and labeled. Any changes to the drawings beyond the conditions of approval may result in more than one submittal being required. I move to approve the minor scale application at 157 Butcher Creek, Lot 1R, Butcher Creek PUD, based on the findings in the staff memo dated May 19, 2023, and with the following conditions. 1 one, as stated in the memo, with the addition of policy DH 25A. And number two, as stated in the staff memo, this motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on May 19, 2023, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days of this approval, or this approval becomes null and void. Unless otherwise indicated, the revised drawings submitted for a certificate of appropriateness must be a complete set with any changes to the drawings clouded and labeled. Any changes to the drawings beyond the conditions of approval may result in more than one submittal being required. And with that said, I will adjourn this
I have one staff
Oh.
announcement.
staff announcement.
It is our lovely Clerk Piper's birthday.
Day to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
And I just want to thank her for being here on her birthday.
Thank
And
you.
that's all the announcement.
I'll just say, in January, P and Z meetings were always on my birthday. And nobody ever sang
Oh.
for me. Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay, with that said, I will adjourn this meeting by unanimous consent. Thank you,
Can I
thank you.
get a Question.
Sure.
off record?
Yeah.
Where,